All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Edges podcast. I got Will Compton live from the Compton compound. You'll see some paraphernalia on the walls. You got Muhammad Ali behind him, and then
Who else next to Muhammad Ali though?
you got the boys. You got my own jersey, and you got Taylor Lewan hanging next to themselves. Nice, perfectly aligned. And you got the Juve panels in the background. The boys
We can put them on at any time, dude.
Just full red light with Loki. That's not a bad idea. What else? We got the Normatec boots in here.
Yeah.
We got the dub slant boards on the floor.
Game ready. Swiss ball, foot massager.
The bare necessities of chasing edges. Yeah.
The massage table.
There's
a lot in here.
When you have your own massage table, you know you're about like taking care of your body.
Yeah.
Right? Or you ever use Soothe, the mobile app? Like the mobile massages where they come to you?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I used it when I was out in Oakland a couple times, but it wasn't that app. It was a different one.
But whenever I'm like, you don't need to bring in your table. I got one.
Yeah. We already got one over here.
Yeah, but all right, but let's get into the weeds a little bit. But before we get into all the blue on your collar, your practice squad life, into the starter world, and then obviously into the podcast world and everything too. What are you doing right now to chase edges? What are you curious about? What areas of your life are you like pushing the boundaries right now?
I would say like balance between everything. Like I've played 8 years, playing 8 years and knowing that I'm kind of like I'm in a mercenary phase, like with finessing training camp. And then usually, a young guy doesn't work out and they want somebody who's dependable, durable, like the Chevy Silverado. Woo! Just plug the Chevy. And then I get called to go in and play. It's like finding that balance of like that entrepreneurship and playing ball, because I'll do ball and stuff in the morning, but a lot of stuff that takes up my mind now is Bussin with the boys, this entrepreneurial spirit that I've had about myself. But at the same time, like you put me on the book awareness, like finding like, and I don't, it's just for lack of a better term. I don't want to sit here and say like I'm just some spiritual guy, or I don't want anybody to get turned off by the word spiritual.
Yeah.
But like tapping in and being in tune with like happiness and what all am I going after, and how do I balance that all through books, through just, I guess, like maturity, instead of like watching Netflix too much or doing all the things that kind of fill whenever I'm done working out, doing all the Bussin stuff. Like, what things am I doing to grow personally, like mentally, spiritually, physically, all that stuff, and putting it into practice. So I would say now, like I was flipping through your little almanac of how do you say his last name?
Naval Ravikant.
Yeah, flipping through that book, and it's got me ready to go get that book at Amazon and get that book in my life. And finding a few books, I heard a quote. It's like, you're better off reading one book 100 times than reading 100 books one time. So I'm in the middle of like trying to, find a couple of those books and those skills, and working in like my unique ability that makes me myself.
Yeah.
Like I've always loved like the blue on your collar, like playing ball, but that's like one chapter of my life. And whether I want it to be or not, I would love to play forever, but I know it's going to come to an end sooner rather than later, now that I'm 31 going on 32. And finding that unique skill set that I've had with being like personality, making dudes laugh, having deeper conversations. That's where I was always obsessed with listening to podcasts, and then I kind of stumble upon, let's put a podcast together, and we come across Bussin with the boys, and just having fun in front of people and just showing people, like, I don't know, like just being myself and finding those avenues to be myself and tapping in with books or whatever it is to help me figure out like and continue to live in my unique skill set.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful is what it is, and it's smart. And like obviously you're absorbing this wisdom from the books, and like obviously you've been through the gauntlet of being on a team with leverage and then being this mercenary too. But so as you like move forward, you found a variation of your own wisdom, of your own balance. But like so with the bus, like how did that get started in the first place? Like how did you take 0 to 1? Like how did that?
So I would say 0 to 1 was writing it down for me. And this was Bussin with the boys written down. It was being the first active NFL player / coach. I wanted to be a coach at the time. Still not closing the door on that. For any GM and all the GMs and coaches that probably listen to the pod.
Holla at the boy.
Yeah, holla at the boy. With a podcast and have 1 million downloads. I'm big on like goal setting, like years out, and just kind of seeing if they go through when I look back at my journals and read over stuff. Also on that same page was earn a 3-year contract for $9 million. Had never attained that, never reached that. Just so people don't think I've hit every goal that I've written down, because that's just, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it was 0 to 1 was writing it down, and that was back when I was in Washington, and I was obsessed with Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, The Fighter and the Kid, Ben Greenfield. I got on Ben Greenfield heavy. We talk about
Juice,
Ben Greenfield all the time. When I got put on to him through Joe Rogan, that's when I first heard about him. I was just obsessed with listening to podcasts. I'd go on longer drives and stuff like that, listen to them from driving from my apartment or house to the facility and back. I would just always have a podcast on. Real estate, when I got on IR and I wanted to dabble in real estate, I'm listening to real estate pods. And I just knew I enjoyed podcasts. So taking that interest that I had, and knowing that I enjoy being in the sauna, being in the cold tub, being around all the boys, the camaraderie, and whether we're cutting up, we're talking about business, we're talking about interests we have off the field, or stories that you've had on the field, that's where I started to think about the idea of having this podcast where I'm having conversations with guys. Now, I feel like the reason I didn't start it back then was because I was like, you're insecure and you're kind of wondering how everybody might perceive it, or if you might play yourself out of the league because you're very open and raw. Because I wanted to be raw. I didn't want to sit here and be PC and, edit all of it all the time, because what made all the conversations with all the boys great was that we were being raw and true to ourselves and talking about it openly, having fun, making jokes. So I feel like I waited, and then when I came to the Titans, that was in the 2018-19 year. I played special teams most of the year. What usually happens for me didn't necessarily happen, where somebody in front of you gets hurt, you get an opportunity, you start playing, you play well, and then you end up taking over.
Yeah, you don't give it up.
Right, and none of that happened for me. Nobody got hurt. They drafted Rashawn Evans. Not that I want anybody to get hurt, but being in the position we are, you kind of need certain opportunities to happen one way or another.
It's the right opportunity, the right eyes on you at the right time, whatever it ends up being. Yeah,
exactly. And they had drafted Rashawn Evans in the first round that year, so he immediately got to play. And I knew I was going to be turning 29. I think I was going to be turning 29. I knew I was a 29-year-old that didn't get to play much. I was on special teams. I didn't have a high round pedigree to back, to have in my background on my resume for scouts to be like, oh, bring Will Compton in the next year. So I knew going into the next year, and I kind of had an up and down year mentally, like going through all that and being like, it's just, I don't think it's going to work out. Because my thought process was, I come in here on a 1 year for $2 million, get ball out and get the re-up, go to the market and continue to play ball.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of setting in that like, I'm 29 and I'm about to not have all this stuff. I need to actually start thinking about what my pivot is going to be after ball, because I'm living in a weird headspace right now. And I've always talked about doing stuff off the field, but I haven't truly found that interest that I know I'm going to transition to. And so I started to dabble in putting together the Airbnb and real estate stuff more, and the podcast. I started to write about the podcast more, what I wanted it to look like, taking all my inspirations from the Rogans and the Fighter and the Kids and the, at the time, Chris D'Elia's of the world, like all this stuff that they did on social media and how they carried it from the podcast and how I wanted our stuff to look.
Yeah.
At the time, it was mine. And then Taylor, I was going to this radio show and I was telling Taylor, hey, you want to do this podcast with me? Because Taylor and I created this relationship in that 1 year that was very fast. I mean, you've met Taylor. You see how quick it, once he's on, like, you're in a circle, right? And we just became boys throughout that whole year. We were accountability buddies through, like, we called each other accountability buddies through, like, Ben Greenfield. We're getting to know each other over pods we've listened to on the Rogan, in the Rogan lane, and then I was kind of putting them on Ben Greenfield and stuff I learned. And, we just always did saunas. We always did recovery stuff together. And I was like, yo, would you want to do this podcast with me? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's the right move. And then it was in December of that year. I was going all in on the pod. I was like, I'm going to do the pod. And I was going to this radio show, and I remember him calling me. It was raining that night. And he was like, so you're really going to do the pod, huh? And I was like, yeah, I need to go all in. All you guys have told me, everyone's told me I need to do it. I need to do it. I need to stop being a little pussy about it. And I need to get out there and start putting this together, like while the iron's hot, while I'm an NFL player. And he was like, I'll do it with you. And I was stoked that he'd do it with me, because it's like, it kind of takes a little bit off your shoulders, because you're going to have a good chemistry from day one on the pod with the boy sitting next to you. And I'm like, all right, I'll get rolling on it. And, we'll get on it in January. January comes, the season ends. We had a win in your end game against the Colts, and we had lost. And the next week, Taylor decided he wanted to go to California and train for the off season. Just like that, the boy, you know the boy. Like he just goes from one thing to the other. He's like, I'm gonna go to Cali. I want to get around sun. I want to get around good stuff. You know, Nashville, the weather, it's just gray here, which is true. And I'm like, bro, okay. And he's like, I know that's not what you're wanting to hear with the pod and everything. He's like, but I want to do the pod. I was like, if you are 100% committed to doing the pod, I will wait for you to come back. I'll wait for you forever, Taylor. I'll wait for you to come back, and we'll hit the ground running when OTA start or when you come back in April. But if not, I need to get going on this now. So I need to know if you want to do it or not. He's like, I'm in, bro. I promise I'm in. So I'm like, all right, I'll wait. So I started interviewing and sitting down with producers and potential people to help put all the sound. Like I'm looking into the equipment. I'm looking at Joe Rogan's site where he kind of puts people on. I'm listening to what he says about audio equipment. And I'm just writing all this stuff down on what I need to do. And he comes back in April. We were sitting with this production crew at the time, Cardboard Film. Shout out Cardboard Films on free shout outs. And they were like, hey, we're looking at studio space, looking at different spots we can do it all on. And he was like, hey, there's this bus in the back. Like, do you think you'd want to do it on a bus? He's showing me pictures. And he's like, it's for sale. Like, it's cheap. And I was like, I don't want to. And I was like, how do we even get all the equipment on? He's like, I don't know. I mean, we might be able to make it work. But and I was like, I know when Taylor comes here and he sees this, he's gonna want to do it on the bus because he's into that, like, the vintage, like the bus kicked ass. I mean, it is what it is now. And I was like, I know when Taylor comes here, he's gonna love it. So let's just wait till he gets there. He saw it. He's like, oh, let's go. And we go out back and see it and everything. He's like, what do you think, Willie? And I was like, I don't know, man. I just don't know if we can get all the equipment on. Like Juice, PP, do you guys think we can get the equipment on? He's like, I mean, we can try. And Taylor's like, look, I'll put 10 grand into the bus. I'll buy it. He's like, I'll put 10 grand into it. And if it doesn't work and you don't like it, then I'll just let it sit in my backyard because I think it rips. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, let's do it. What do we got to lose? And he's like, I know one of my dudes named Jeff. He's like, his crew, they can probably do it here within 2 weeks. Boom. Fast turnaround, bro. And so they get it all done. Bus looks like what it did. We document kind of the whole thing of it getting put together. And in the meantime, we were thinking about a name. I wanted it to be called the Den Podcast, and Taylor would always be like, hey, it's a working title, guys. Yeah. Because Wolves, I wanted it to be the Wolf Den. I wanted it to seem like, it had this mystique about it where you're going into the den and it's raw, it's uncut. You're just talking shop with the boys, whoever you have on the podcast. And we kept working at stuff. We didn't necessarily want to do like a for the boys thing at first, because we felt like we made that with the Titans. Like, it was something Taylor and I were doing in the summer before. We'd always be like, hey, the boys, like, we'll go work out with Dob, then the boys will go get a burger at Whole Foods, and then the boys can go kick it at Taylor's, because I was in the hotel at the time. So we'd always just be like, and then when one of us would come into a room, we'd be like, the boy. And then we carried it in a training camp. And as you know, it was one of those things, like, you're just bonding in training camp over just the grimy days. Like, you'd walk in, the boys are in the hot tub before practice. I'd like walk in the room and Taylor would be like, the boy, and I'd be like, the boys. And then like Jayon and other guys would get involved, right? So you're kind of just yelling this for the boys thing. We'd break it down to for the boys. Yeah. And it just kind of took on its own kind of character throughout the year with the Titans. And we didn't necessarily think we wanted to do something with the whole for the boys, because we didn't want the guys on the roster to think like we're doing something that's capitalizing on the thing we created with the team, right? And so we were kind of going with, should it be a For the Boys podcast? Could it be like Two Boys, One Bus? We're saying all these things, and we were working with this brand company out in this small boutique brand out in Chicago, I believe. And she was like, what do you think about Bussin' with the Boys? I was like, I mean, it could play. I thought we all thought it was kind of dumb and corny at the time, but we're just like, hey, Bussin' with the Boys, like, let's roll with Bussin' with the Boys. And so we started to get, all the graphics and stuff made, like the logos and everything else, and started to run with it. And that's how Bussin' with the Boys got started.
Dude, that's
phenomenal. A long little journey of it, but like that's how it came into fruition.
Dude, that's phenomenal though. And just the fact that, like, what I see, like, obviously I've seen a bunch of my friends and other colleagues and stuff start up podcasts and stuff. Like, you didn't ease your way into it. Like, you sat down, you went official all in from the jump. Like, your first step was sit down with the producer, then you hit the whole sound crew and that kind of stuff. It wasn't it wasn't a half-assed deal.
Absolutely. And like, honestly, it's something that I carried over from like principles I had learned throughout playing ball. And for me, it's like the three things, right? What, how, and why. What do you want to do? How do you get there? And why do you do it? And there was just something I kind of like, I carried over from pro day training to making the practice squad my first year on the Washington football team. Almost said it.
Yep.
And then to making the team the next year. And it's like mental visualization, sports psychology stuff that I started putting to work. And then I would listen to Tony Robbins, and I'm listening to all these people who are kind of filling my brain and kind of helping me build this, like, you know, how to use my brain and everything else. But it's always like, it's what, how, and why. And I'm a big believer in writing shit down before you do it. Not only to remember and figure out how you do it. You start with the end in mind. What does the processes look like? Like, what is a podcaster that's starting to have a podcast and they want to have a banger podcast, like a top podcast? Like, what are they doing? Like, what sound are they investing into? Like, what production crew? Like, how does it look on social? How does it, like, how engaging are we going to be? Like, I have it written down. I want to be the most engaging podcast on social media. Whether or not we are, I know we do a good job of it.
Yeah.
But it all starts with this idea of writing stuff down. Like, how does it all look? And then how are you going to get there? So what do you got to buy? What are we going to pay people? You got to learn about business stuff. You start to learn that it's a way more than just, you know, a couple mics and sitting there bullshitting like you're hooking up your laptop. You're learning about all these things you got to do, but it's a small business.
Yeah.
And then the why you're able to recite and look at. That's why it fired me up, Taylor having this stuff on his lock screen yesterday.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I remember the days of having stuff where you're talking to yourself on your lock screen. But day 30 Will Compton isn't going to feel the same as day 1 Will Compton, who's extremely motivated about doing all this stuff. It's going to get tiring. It's going to get harder. It's going to be harder to wake up, grinding, working out every day, eating food, staying disciplined, doing all these things. And so writing it down and seeing it every day, and why you do it is what's going to get you over those things. So it's like those three things on what, how, and why have been what I've kind of carried over principle-wise into anything I've ever done.
Yeah, so in a seamless transition, since you mentioned Pro Day, I wanted to address the numbers that were put up by the boy.
Hey.
The biggest number of them all, a 4.52 40 at Pro Day at what, 238?
Yeah, I mean, dude, yeah, it was nuts.
That's the what?
Yeah. Bro, yes. It was you know, so I didn't get invited to the combine like
Same.
yourself, and you're salty as fuck, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? You're kind of down in the dumps, but you realize, like, so to give context on all this stuff too, on writing it down, going into my senior year, you know, Bo Pelini was our head coach, and he's a tough-nosed dude. He's process-oriented. He's, you know, over results, all that stuff. I've learned so much stuff from Coach Bo, but he would always kind of be in my head because I never wanted to mess up. I never wanted to let him down. And I just remember my boy Rex Burkhead. He's a running back for the Patriots. He was always so calm under any kind of pressure. Whenever he got coached hard or anything, he was always able to continue to rise to the occasion no matter what. And I remember asking Rex going into my senior year, hey, is there anything you do or listen to or anything, any kind of advice you got, like how you are the way you are mentally? Like, I mess with it. Like, I respect you. And he was like, read this book, Mental Edge by Kenneth Baum. And it's this, I don't know if it's professional or not, but they would do the 2-on-2 sand volleyball. He's a competitive sand volleyball player, but he like lives in sports psychology. He has this book on writing stuff down, and I'm reading this book, this Mental Edge book, and I'm realizing like my brain is disadvantageous for me right now. Like the way I am, the way I'm approaching an open field tackle, I think, don't miss this. You can't miss this. All right, here you go. You're going to have to make this play. And now I've learned like what you think you end up becoming. And I've learned that I've just kind of handicapped myself thinking that way mentally because I'm trying to not let people down. And so I'm thinking the worst in certain situations other than like, just flowing, letting it all happen. And so I start putting this sports psychology stuff to work on this whole writing stuff down, visualizing, like literally meditating and seeing yourself and feeling what's going on around you, hearing the noises around you, everything, breathing correctly, cues, self-talk, all these things that kind of tap you into this zone to play the game and everything else. So I carried it over into pro day training because that's something practical. That's something you can write down and actually measure. You can track your progress with, benching how many reps and jumping this high and running this fast. You can monitor all that stuff. And so I just had goals. Whether or not I sat down with an agent, and he's like, "This is what you're projected at. It's 4.85." So what scouts had me at. Like,
Yeah.
when they come in and meet with you, these agents, those dumbass agents who try and recruit you and tell you, like, show you all this stuff.
Lie to your face.
Yeah, bro. And it bothered me that was like the perception of me. But knowing that, like, I believed and knew I can run, like I could run, that the boy could run, that I can do all these things and outperform these guys that were at the combine. Like, so I wrote down, like, a 4.5 40, wrote down, like, I forget, 20 something reps on bench. Like, I'm writing down everything, right? And then when I'm visualizing, I'm obviously training my ass off and doing whatever it takes eating wise to be on a regiment. And but visualization wise, like, I'm feeling my hand in the turf. I'm feeling my stance. I'm seeing the tens of pro scouts down around the 40-yard line. I'm feeling the pressure that should go into pro day. I'm trying to make this stuff up in my head, what it's going to feel like, all these things, the senses, all that stuff. And so that way, when I'm running the 40 and I'm at pro day, like, I feel like I've been in that environment, hundreds of times, compared to that being the first time I'm going to be there. So I'm going to be a little surprised, or that anxiety builds up a little more. And so, yeah, bro. And to add to that story, I had a sports hernia. I couldn't squat.
4.52 with the hernia.
It was a 4.54, but yes,
okay,
with a sports hernia.
That might be the fastest blue collar 40 of all time.
Hey, I'm telling you, there's some stories like it.
I'm gonna have to do
Dob and I talk about it, and like how, like, it's not like it needs to be known and stuff, but we like, bro, do you remember that training? And we'll like go back and forth, because I couldn't squat. I had to be on like this. It wasn't a pitch shark or anything at the time, but it was more something that sat on your shoulders.
The safety squat. Or
yeah.
It's attached to a rack. Like,
correct.
I got you.
Yeah, and I could only quarter squat. Like, I couldn't. I had to run. I had to do speed training with a wrap on my hip most of the time, and I could only go up to 70%. I had to more so just do mechanics other than actually training. It would flare up on me all the time. Like, it was brutal. Like, I had to truly lean into this sports psychology stuff, and that is why I am such a believer in the psychology and the mind and everything else, because I saw it come into fruition with when you should be at a disadvantage not being able to squat, not being able to speed train, do all this stuff, and then go out there and still perform at that level. And you get to that day and you got Toradol and all that stuff running through your system.
The bare necessities.
Yeah, the bare necessities to make it through and grind it out. And then 2 days after that, I fly out to Europe to get my sport hernia surgery. And then I get a sport hernia surgery and get it all taken care of by the time I get to rookie minicamp. And but yeah, bro, grinded that out. And from that moment, I was on cloud 9 when they told me I ran a 4.5, and I had ran like a 6.8 3-cone and a 4.1 something pro agility or something like that. Like, that night, bro, I was on cloud 9, like tears in my eyes that, like, it all worked. Like, this shit fucking worked.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I was bought in on the visualization. I was bought in on the law of attraction stuff. I was bought in on all that shit, bro. I'm talking hype train. They make fun of, sometimes you hear people make fun of like the speakers and the YouTube and the stuff like that. But I'm just thinking, like, I was brainwashed to it when that stuff happened, because that's just how I wanted to feed my mind on achieving goals.
Dude, no doubt. And just to like kind of contrast my story to yours, like, I found the psychology side of it later, and that was kind of found through the breathwork stuff. But like, obviously I had my goals written down, that kind of stuff too, but I wasn't journaling. I wasn't tracking all my workouts and that kind of thing. And so like, once I started journaling, once I started seeing and be able to look back on the progress you made, you look back and you see the same problems, eventually you're going to resolve those problems, all that kind of thing. But like, I just fell in love with the process and the tangible side of it. So that ended up being more my body, my blood work, and that kind of thing. And I neglected some of the psychology side of it that I've now found to be incredibly powerful, incredibly manifesting and motivating and that kind of thing. So like, as you like, I guess, so you had that crazy experience where like, that was Rex Burkhead book, and
Rex Burkhead put me on that book,
and that book was your push into the psychology
that book
world.
Was the first one. And then I'm reading The Compound Effect. I'm reading different books, anything from Tony Robbins. I'm listening to all that stuff. I was more of like a YouTube, listening to all the stories. But yeah, that's how it started for me.
Yeah, dude, that's so damn cool.
And then it carried over into football and everything else. And then there's like a learning curve, and there's there's not a moment to where this happened. Like that one, I can sit there and tell you the moments on all this stuff, how it transitioned. But then there's moments in time to where you realize you're very obsessed and like attached to the identities and things of being a football player and being all these numbers and this grind, which I don't like. That's the place I needed to be in. But when uncontrollable things wouldn't go my way,
injuries, etc.
Injuries, whether you're cut or not a cut, but you're right. A practice squad, a draft pick comes in. You know, those are things I wasn't able to control. Right.
Yeah.
All these other variables I'm able to control. I'm able to track. I'm able to repeat it, and I would get off the rails a little bit of that on things that I couldn't control. So, like learning that about myself, I'm realizing like there's other things that I'm missing that I don't have in my bag right now.
Yeah, sure.
The club in your bag. Like I didn't have that in my bag yet. Like I didn't have the maturity, the wisdom that there were certain things I wasn't listening to in these YouTube videos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you see the Jim Carrey stuff. I wish everybody could get rich. So then you realize like you just realize that that's not the answer.
Yeah.
And not that I'm not saying rich was my motivation. I'm just talking about like these fascinations and these obsessions that I had and these things that I felt like I needed to be and attain. And then when something uncontrollable would happen, my mental would navigate it because I always tried to control it all.
Yeah,
I was always trying to control it all.
And with that control comes stress and anxiety.
Correct. Yeah. And all this stuff's going in my head. And then, you know, when somebody gets put over you on a depth chart or everything else, and you know, you're just pissed off and salty because it's more of just an insecurity thing because it's a perception I have of myself, and it's also a perception that other people might have. Like, okay, if these coaches don't think that, then maybe other coaches think that too. And then you're just living in your head of this stress and anxiety. And so I got my opportunity. This is in 2017 when I tore my Liz Frank.
Yeah, that was your first IR trip.
That was my first IR trip, and to me, that's when I started to dabble in the real estate stuff and started listening to more things. And then not until the Titans year, when that stuff wasn't working out for me, I wasn't getting on the field or anything like that, and I felt like the end was near that year, is when I started to dive in on all these other pivots. And I felt like these last 2 years of seeing the podcast come into fruition, where I told teams no in OTAs and training camp and was saying no so that way I could work on the pod, and I would basically wait until as late as I could in training camp and get on a team. That was the Saints. That was the Oakland Raiders year. When that year happened, the perspective I had, that's where stuff shifted, that like, oh, I'm at peace with certain things. I'm at peace now, but I'm allowing to be at peace with certain things that I can't control because I'm understanding how to adapt now because I've kind of had to, with not getting my way in free agency or not being on a team the way I've wanted to or anything like that. Like I started to realize like everything's all good the year me and you met and stuff. Yeah. And I don't know. And then when the Raiders shit happened, like, and I had the green dot on, the boy was balling a little bit at the end of the year.
Guaranteed.
I was like, oh shit, like I still got juice, and I wasn't nearly as obsessive this year as I had been in years past with football.
With football, or like your training too? Do you think
both?
Like,
both. Because I remember being in Dobson's office multiple times. Dobson is my strength coach that had me at Nebraska for 5 years, and then he was at Vanderbilt, and we're both in Nashville, and so I would train at Vanderbilt all the time. You knew that, and I'd be in his office multiple times, like, you know, half in, half out. Like, do I still want to play? Like, almost like just knowing that the discipline and the training to be a football player, to be a violent-ass football player and be good, you got to go through hard training and hard shit. And when your mind isn't on that level, it's hard to just be in it all the time because there's nothing that I'm reaping from going in every day and just going hard. Especially when I'm thinking about the pod now. Vrabel just talked about cutting his dick off to win a Super Bowl. Jalen Ramsey shouting us out, you know, saying like bussin' with the boys. Like, we're starting to get love. And I'm starting to realize like I can do other things other than be a football player. Like, then my mind's running there creatively. So there would be times I'm sitting there with Dob, like, not wanting to work out. And he's like, you got to stay ready. You got to do yourself justice.
Yeah.
Like Will, you say it all the time. Like, what would your 10-year-old self want you to do? And like see all that stuff through. And then how that year kind of manifested, not being all the way in like that and still having some juice and balling and playing well and seeing that I can juggle it and do these things. It was like it it was like a weight was lifted. Like I didn't have that stress anymore.
Yeah, no doubt, because like I fell victim to the routine a lot. Like I built up all these boundaries to protect this body that needs to work at this level and be this violent, sustain this amount of banging on the body and that kind of thing. So where I basically stunted my growth while I was playing in the NFL most of the time, where I didn't grow and didn't spend time because I was always like the plan A. If you spend time on plan B, it takes away from plan A. So
exactly.
Like, yeah. So I guess I want to go a little bit deeper on the balance, what that did for you football wise. Like, so I know, like you said, like you excelled with the Raiders for sure. So what did that balance, like what stress or how did like your play influence that? Because technically you're not in the greatest shape of your entire life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the Raiders called, and it's an interesting story because Barstool was wanting to talk with us now. Barstool was wanting to negotiate, and they were interested in Bussin' with the boys. Taylor and I had the episodes backlogged. This is in August. Taylor's in training camp with the Titans. I haven't went anywhere yet. I haven't even went to the Saints yet. I had Barstool's interested in talking to us. Taylor and I are like, all right, do we want to be with them or do we not want to? And we had interest in doing it, but it's like, what does that look like? What does that even mean? But football's happening. So it's like, let's just do this year and then see where we're at the end of the year. And at this point, there had been 3 teams, I think, that called right before training camp that we had turned down and said, no, we're not going to do workouts. It was like, am I in a group workout? And if we're in a group workout, it was like, then no, there's no need for me to come in. I'm ready to go. Bring the boy in solo dolo. You'll see he's in shape and you'll sign him.
That's tight.
And
that never even crossed my mind. I was like, crack the door open and I'll kick that bitch in.
Yeah,
that's my mindset. I never had the leverage to say,
Well, I didn't necessarily felt like I had leverage. I just knew I was going in on Bussin' with the boys.
Okay, I got you.
And I wanted to buy myself time because I knew we had something. And so I didn't necessarily felt like I had leverage. I just knew in my head that at this point, the resume I had put together in ball, with being a starter, having starting experience, captain, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The coaches that wanted me to play on their team, they knew their stuff about me already. Teams that didn't necessarily know, like, you knew what you were going to get with me, right? I knew I wasn't some just high-level special teamer. Like, I knew I was like an insurance policy. I was like, you knew you were going to get the best backup if he comes to your team type of thing. That was in my brain. So, in my head, I was like, the teams that want me, they know about me, and they're not going to bullshit or waste time. So, that was just the card I played.
Yeah, it was a refining process.
Right. With the fear of like having this pod, Vrabel saying like, having that open-ended podcast that we had, because Delaney talked about almost dying from an IV, and that made a pro football headline, media headline. And I didn't know if I would play myself out of the league by having something like this, because it's like, is this risk worth? Yeah, if we're going to bring in a minimum guy, that was another thing too. I knew I was going to be a 1-year minimum player. So if I'm going to be a 1-year minimum player, there's no need for me to go anywhere and put wear and tear on my body. When any coach that knows me and wants me on their team, they're going to know what I bring to the table. So let's not put wear and tear on my body when I don't have to.
Yeah, no doubt.
And with also like what I was saying, fear of playing myself out by having this open forum podcast. And the Saints had called twice early in training camp, and we had said no both times. The Jets, Avery Williams. Yep. He had tore his ACL with the Jets that year. Jets called. Barstool's about to fly in, and my agent's calling me, and I'm like, not answering those calls. And then I answered, and they're like, hey, well, how do you feel about the Jets? I'm like, I don't want to go to New York. And they're like, all right. Like, they have a void, and I was like, I don't want to play for the Jets.
They end up losing like 3 or 4 guys that year.
Yeah.
They had a crazy year.
Oh, yeah. And then Barstool's supposed to meet us. It's like on the 15th or 16th, and the Saints have 2 guys to go down in a preseason game, so now they really need a linebacker. And they had called my agent, and my agent's calling me, hey Will, the Saints want to fly you in, you're working out solo, they want to sign you. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. And Craig Robertson, he very highly respected special teamer, backup backer,
52,
dog,
good player,
bro, yeah. And he had strained his hamstring, tore his hamstring, so he's going to be out for several weeks. And then Alex Anzalone, their high rounder, he had hurt his shoulder, so he's going to be out through week 1. So they needed somebody to fill that void. And he's like, they want you to come in. I remember they called when I was working out with Dob, and then I listened to the voicemail, and he was like, they want you to come in, blah, blah, blah. That same day, Barstool was flying in to meet with us. and to go over Bussin with the boys. Erica Nardini, the CEO, they fly in. We go to True Foods and eat. But that day, my agent's like leaving voicemails, texting me. You know, hey, we got to fly you out tonight if you want to go, and like for the Saints, like they want you to fly out tonight and be ready for a workout in the morning and potentially, you know, be in meetings and practice and stuff tomorrow. I ignore and don't answer these phone calls until later in the day because I knew I was going to have to fly out and then I wouldn't get to meet with Barstool.
Yeah.
So I hit him up probably later afternoon like, hey, I'm sorry, I've been rolling around today. I've been training and doing stuff. Like, put me out on the first flight tomorrow morning and I'll get out there, work out, do the same thing. And he's like, all right, let me get with them.
Even silencing those phone calls, that's like a bet on the life outside of football too. That's kind of dope.
Right. And but I needed to be in this meeting because I was stoked about it.
Yeah.
So we meet with Erica and them, and they're just gauging interest. It was a good dinner. Like there wasn't nothing exchanged negotiating wise. It was more so, what do you guys want to do? What are you guys thinking? We really dig what you guys have. We like your tone. We like the voice, the chemistry you guys have together. We love the guests you have on. But even if it was just you two, like we like what you guys have relationship wise. And we kind of told them we're just gonna wait out this year. Run our episodes that we already had backlog, kind of told them how we did everything and how we wanted to juggle both. And they thought that was very cool. And then the next morning, I pack up that night, fly out the next morning to the Saints. And what you pack a bag, you don't know if you're coming back. Yeah. And, so it kind of sucked with fiance or girlfriend at the time, wife now. But she's at home, so it's kind of like, it sucks having to leave like that. Like drop of a hat, you're ready to go. You're gonna go work out. You pack one bag, you're ready to go there.
Yeah, it's 2 days or 2 months. Who knows?
Yeah. So next morning, I fly out to the Saints, hit a workout, beast the workout. Like looked good, man. They coach Coach Dennis Edwards, Coach Dennis Allen. Coach Dennis Allen is the D coordinator for the Saints, or he was at the time. And he's like, do you like Mike or do you like Will? I was like, I'll play both, whatever you want. Like I'm usually better being the communicator, but I'll play whichever one. Yeah. He's like, good to know. And then we go into the locker room. The dude who walks back there, he's like, hey, you look good in that workout. I'm like, I appreciate it. And I'm like, oh, let's fucking go. And
boys in.
Yeah, boys in. They come in. They're like, hey, they want to sign you. And I didn't know how to feel about it when I had the contract in front of me. Like I didn't know if I actually wanted to continue playing. It was, and it happened a couple times. Like we can even talk about that with the Raiders too when we get to that point. But I remember having the contract and I was in my hotel room and Neil, I was on the phone with him. I was like, well, has there been anybody else? I wanted to be on the Titans again. I wanted to be on Green Bay as well because Green Bay had LaFleur, my KO, who was my linebacker coach, and they were steady talking to me the whole time.
Nice.
And or the LA Rams with McVay and Joe Barry, who was the linebacker coach, who was my coordinator at the Redskins. So I'm trying to play for a coach, like an environment that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, no doubt.
Which is I get there and it's like, I'll tell you what Charo told me when we get there. But the contract's sitting there and I'm like, well, do I got to sign down? And it's like, listen, Will, you can do whatever you want. Like, but you have an opportunity to play. Like, it's an easy flight from Nashville to New Orleans, nonstop. He's giving me all those variables, the pros, the cons on it.
Who are you talking to right now? You're talking
Neil
to
Cornrich, my agent.
Okay.
And he was like, we got all the things in the minimum deal done. Like, there's no bonus. We have no other teams, so you're not going to get a signing bonus. Like, you either this is it or not. It sounds like you got a good opportunity there. They seem to like you. And I'm like, all right, well, let me think on it. And they're like, I go into the team hotel where the team's staying. They're giving me the playbook. They're doing all this stuff. Like, hey, here you go, practice in the morning. And I'm sitting there with some anxiety about it because I'm like, I don't even know if I'm going to do this. And I'm up in my hotel room, and I'm calling LaFleur. I'm calling KL. I'm like, yo, I have a contract right in front of me for the Saints. I will fly to Green Bay right now.
Let's go.
And I will play for you.
Being your own agent. I love it.
Yeah. And because LaFleur, he had DM'd me on Twitter, and he's like, hey, what's your number? Gave it to him, and he called. He's like, yo, I'd love to have you. I'd love to have the leader in the locker room. I'd love to have your veteran presence around all the guys. And I'm going to pitch 3 free agents to I forget the GM's name. What? Yeah, but I'm going to pitch 3 free agents to him tomorrow, and you're going to be one of them. Are you healthy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I would play for you in a heartbeat. And so he's like, bro, I pitched my ass off about you. We'll see what happens, but I don't have much pull here because I'm a first-year head coach. And so I just can't make any promises. And so that night when I'm calling him when I'm in the Saints hotel room, he's like, I've tried hitting him up 2 or 3 more times. He's like, dude, you should take it, man. Like, I'm not going to be here and take away an opportunity just because I selfishly want you. He's like, you should play for them. So I'm FaceTime with Charo. And I'm kind of telling her all these, like, you know, these feelings that I'm feeling about it.
Yeah, there's an internal battle that's happening.
Yeah, because I didn't know if I truly wanted it anymore. And she's like, babe, you know, like, you got to see this through. Like, you're able to juggle both podcasting. Like, the podcast is going to be there for you. Like, I'm going to be there for you when you get back. It almost makes me emotional.
As it should, dude.
But it's like, she's like, you would want to see this through. Like, knowing you, this isn't like the Will last year. You wouldn't even like what you're saying right now, type of thing. And you know, she's like, you got to see this thing through. So I'm like, all right. I signed the dotted line. I'm like, all right, I'm a Saint. So I'm trying to get in all this playbook stuff. Sorry for that little emotional dump right there. It's like anytime I get into something heavy, bro, I can like it like sparks the old nostrils.
Dude, but
God, it happens in therapy too. Like anytime I gotta talk about certain things, it's like, you know, when you're actually having like a mental battle.
Yeah, but like as we like regress to the story, you get to those points of tension again, where like dude, I've broken down 5 times on my journey, and just I sobbed in my car when I got cut from the UFL, and like, then I'm talking to like my parents, like, cause like, and then even like with my last workout, like I've been out for a year and a half, like, do I even want to play anymore? And like that kind of stuff, you're like, it just scares you.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know, you're questioning yourself because you're like, bro, like, what is going on in my head? Like, I have an NFL contract in front of me, and I have a podcast that's starting to get popularity and catch traction. Like, what am I scared of, type of thing. And honestly, I felt like it was me being in an uncomfortable environment again. Like, if I really get to the root of it, I'm being a soft, you know, very vulnerable person in an environment where I don't know any of the boys. I'm in a new locker room, I'm around a new staff. I like, if I actually dissect it, like, to me, that's what's happening. Because why am I not wanting to jump at these opportunities?
No doubt. And so the more I've dove into sports psychology as I've started to coach it, and like the breath work, and I've started to coach it, like one of the bare roots of psychology is the negativity bias. So like you get negative and you get doubt and fear and all these things, and they show up in very certain, like, so they show up during times of uncertainty, which that was times of attention where you have attention from coaches and whatever, like NFL is attention, the camera's on you. And then obviously adversity, like it shows up nonstop. So like now if you understand, like like the negativity bias is used to solve problems for survival. This isn't survival. This is the problems and stress and the goals and all that stuff we put on ourselves. But like that, like, so now every time I start to get put in that situation, or like where I'm scared, or like I don't know people, or I'm walking into like a new podcast or anything along those lines, like I'm just like, do they want me to podcast them? Should I ask them? Like all that kind of stuff. That's just like, that's literally just my uncertainty. That's my brain solving a problem. It's not what's real in the real world right now. Right.
Yeah. And so that night, like, you know, we get going. The next day I go out to practice. I'm getting to know everybody, getting to know all my new teammates and stuff like that. And it's 48 hours before preseason game 3. And so they're not putting me, they basically just ended camp, like training camp. So you're like,
perfect time.
Let's fucking go. Yeah. Don't have to be in all the pads and anything else anymore. And they're not obviously not throwing me in the fire, but I'm diving in. I'm immersed in trying to learn the playbook. And I'm like telling myself, I'm like, all right, if I am who I say I am, like talking about this heady, high IQ, like I'll be able to put it to practice. Like I need to know that I can fucking take in a brand new playbook.
Yeah, and that's the real world. Like,
right, exactly.
You've always had those skills at this point. Now you're getting to that point where you're getting over that uncertain phase, and now you're trusting yourself. Yeah, that's awesome. And
so we're out at practice and we're doing the walkthroughs, and I'm trying to catch on to things. So I might take one rep in a jog through. They throw me in on a base rep, and I might go through one rep, and then everything else is just studying and tape and everything else. Day 2 is the day before the game. So we're flying to who'd we play? Who did we play? It was I can't remember who we played. It might have been the Jets. I think it was the Jets. And we go up to the Jets, and they're asking me, I'm retaining some stuff, and they're like, would you want to play tomorrow? And I was like, Sure, why not? Like, throw me in there.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I'm like, what do I have to lose?
Yeah,
Nothing to lose.
I tackle a guy with the ball. If the ball's in there, I knock it down.
Yeah. I was like, sure, let's go. And they're like, all right, we might get you in the fourth quarter or something like that. I'm like, all right, cool. And so we get to the game, and I play solid. Like, I don't have too many mental errors, and I have a couple good plays. And I had one good play in 2 minutes where I had a good open field tackle in space and kept the running back in bounds. And which was a big thing. Where linebacker coach was like, hey, you caught a lot of people's eye with that tackle, blah, blah, blah. After that third preseason game, I'm repping with the ones in base. Let's go, dude. Yeah. And so I'm playing well and getting along, like, making friends, like doing all this
being
stuff.
yourself.
Being myself, yeah. And just immersed into learning learning everything that I can and playing well in practice. So then we go into the fourth preseason game where it's at New Orleans and Miami comes to play. And they're like, hey, we're gonna run you with the ones. We need to continue to knock rust off of you to get ready for week 1. And you'll play the first half and we'll get you out of there. Yeah. And so I'm out there in the fourth preseason game. Dude, have a good first series, couple series maybe. But it was like, it might have only been one series I was out there, but I think I had 4 or 5 tackles. And I sprained my ankle. They ran they're an I slot and they run a stretch to the close side. And I basically run through the tackle, chip the fullback, and get a tackle for loss. Bro, hype. One of the better plays I've put on film that I'm happy about in like my career.
Yeah, you beat 3 guys' ass in one play.
And the tackle that I ran through, he falls on my ankle pops, and from that moment I hit the ground. I just knew it was sprained. I didn't know what it was. But even a small sprain, I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Because they need a linebacker right now. So this isn't going to be good no matter if it's a couple weeks or not.
Yeah.
Like, I just knew. And a small, a low ankle sprain, like I had an acute sprain like on one of the ligaments. And I was going to be out like 3 or 4 weeks. And so we do an injury settlement. They're bummed. They're like, look, man, please keep us in mind. Like, we're going to want you back. We don't know what's going to happen. All that spiel, but they're like, there's nothing you did. Like, we are legitimately bummed that you hurt your ankle because you're going to make the team. And everyone was like, how's this dude, like, came in and retained the playbook like you did. And I'm like, I appreciate it, coach. He's like, depth is where you win championships, is how you win Super Bowls, is how you win championships. I think the Saints has been like the best organization I've been around, just to see the way they operate, the way their people are to each other, like from top to bottom. 5-star resort.
Hell yeah.
And so I get an injury settlement. As I'm getting an injury settlement, I see on the ticker that the Saints trade for Kiko Alonso. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's how they're going to fill their void. And who knows if I'll be back, whenever I get healthy.
Yeah, your boy's watching all this from the couch, too. Like, I'm watching every linebacker
move.
Yeah,
no doubt. And so I come back home to Nashville. Injury settlement, I'm rehabbing, getting ready. It actually takes a little longer than I thought it would to get my ankle back right. But it was quiet, man. My agent, the day I came back, he's like, bro, you caught a lot of people's attention. Like, everyone's calling and checking on you and everything else. He's like, you're in a good spot. It's good. He always says it's good to be Will Compton type of thing. Like, he's always he knows the game, bro. He's supreme elite negotiator.
Then he's hyping up the hype man himself.
Yeah. He knows how to persuade anybody. So he's like, oh, it's good to be Will Compton. Just get that thing right. We'll get you. You'll be back on the team in no time. But I didn't hear anything for the longest time. And I'm kind of getting used to watching the game on Sundays, right? And doing Bussin with the boys. Our boy at the time, Matt Neely, he's doing tailgates with the bus. And that's when the tailgating and the live events came about. That's how that all came about. So a few weeks go by, and I think it's the week you might have came through. I don't even know what part of the season that was. But I was like, why not go to a tailgate? At first, I didn't want to go because I didn't want to be seen around like, seeming like I'm partying or anything else like that.
Yeah.
But at this point, my ankle was getting better, and I'm like, why not go check out a tailgate? Everybody's going, like, and I'm in town, so why not go? I can just support the Titans. I can support the boys.
Yeah, it's part of the business too. Like, but we get so heady about like you have to look the part, be the part to get signed, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't want anything to like take a chip out of your armor when they're looking at you. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I started to go to the tailgates and everything. The Titans weren't playing that well. This is the year they go to the AFC Championship. But they started off bad. I want to say like 2-4 out of the gate.
Yeah, I think I was there like week 5 or 6, right around that time.
Yeah.
Right when Tannehill flopped in. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was not fun doing Bussin' with the Boys because everyone, Taylor was having holding penalties coming back from his 4-game suspension. Like,
Yeah.
it was like that. So you're like, fuck. You watch them lose the game. I'm like, I'm glad I'm not in that team meeting tomorrow. And then you're just like, it sucks to push Bussin' with the Boys right now because, everyone's badgering you because you are like we're only 2 active NFL players with this podcast where we're out there and engaged, and people are like, focus on playing ball when people just don't understand it.
Yeah.
But you knew you were getting that backlash. We're very uncomfortable having to do that. Like, hey, Taylor, don't tweet or do anything about it. I'll handle it. And I'm slightly stressed about that, but also at the same time, I'm starting to get used to not playing on Sundays. Like, this really isn't that shitty because the boys are losing right now, and I know what their bubble's like. And you just think the world's falling down, and you just don't get that, like, you're just in that bubble right now. But I was coming to grips that maybe I won't get called this year.
Yeah.
As I'm catching the groove again with Bussin' and getting back everything else, I remember, like, Charles, like, do you think any team will call you? Because we're in, like, week 5, 6, 7, all this stuff. And I'm like, babe, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I was like, I do think it's getting to a point that the good teams, I was like, I think the good news is I'll be on a team that could potentially be a contender. I'll be on a team that is winning right now, and they have depth problems, and they want somebody to come in that's dependable. Like, the teams that are losing, there's no point to bring me in because you build for the future.
Yeah,
like,
they're having tryouts. Other teams are building for that season.
Exactly. Yeah. The teams that have a shot, they're building to get to the Super Bowl. So the good thing is I'll be on a team that's trending up. I was like, I just hope nobody from Cali calls because I don't want to go to Cali. That's why any coast, I was like, I'd play for Washington again because I'm familiar with them. I was like, anywhere on the coast I don't care to go to because, I'll just be a long ass trip and I'll have to be away for a couple months. Like, for real, it's no easy flight. Sure enough, Oakland calls, bro. And I'm in the same spot mentally again because everything is still going well for us. With Bussin'. And I'm like, man, do I want to go out to California? Because the Raiders were like 4-3, I believe, or 4-4. They were kind of 500. They weren't like that winning team where I knew I was going to go in and you get to ride to go chase the Super Bowl. It's like, man, because I wanted to be on a winning team. I wasn't in the space of, do I want to play ball again? It was more like, do I want to travel all the way out to California for a team that's like kind of 500 right now and just, finish. It's not like they had a void at a starting backer. Like, I would go in and kind of just fill a spot and be on special teams and stuff. And it's the same thing. It was kind of like, just go. Like, you have nothing to lose. It's only 8 weeks. It's 2 months. Yeah. And then I'll be back. So took that. I'm out on a flight to Oakland and go out to Oakland, beast the workout. There's a couple guys there with me working out too. Sewell Cravens was the only other linebacker, but he's like smaller. He would have been like a dime guy. So I was like the only middle backer there. And I was comfortable going because it was John Gruden. And I'm like, this dude's a legend. It'd be sick to play for him.
For sure.
Because I played with Jay for 5 years on Washington. I can go out and play for John because I've sat and I was like a Gruden grinder. So I got to sit and have a production meeting with him. And it's funny because I was actually in a vulnerable spot and kind of got choked up in front of him on a story he was asking about.
Interesting.
And so I had a rapport with him.
Yeah.
Like, to where, like, he knows, we kind of know each other.
Yeah.
And the defensive side, the defensive staff out there, I knew from from going through the draft process with the Cincinnati Bengals. So everyone's kind of tight. Like, I'm always one person away. I'm one person removed from this whole staff.
Yeah.
So I go out there, have a great workout, and I'm tweeting throughout the workout. Like, I'm not throughout the workout, but I'm tweeting throughout my trip. Like, hey, I'm shooting the eyes. I'm getting the call. Everyone's hyped that I'm going out there because I had been going to the tailgate. Yeah. So everyone from Nashville now is kind of rooting for me.
Yeah, you have this presence.
Yeah. And so I'm like, we'll see what happens. About to hit the workout, and then I'm in. It's like, somebody said Will Compton signing with the Raiders, and I quote tweeted, I'm like, no, I haven't. I haven't signed anything yet. Like, nothing's happened.
Yeah.
Because the Raiders put in front of me an injury clause. And I had beats of the workout. I go up to negotiate or to sign, not necessarily negotiate. You have no leverage. And it's a 1-year minimum deal. But they put an injury clause in there saying if I had hurt anything on my right extremity, my lower extremity, that they could cut me, no strings attached, no rehab, no payment for surgery, none of that stuff. I know you were talking about it on Bussin' with the Boys.
But this is because of just the ankle injury earlier in the season.
The ankle injury, and then I had the knee history with the torn PCL.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So they're trying to kind of like, do their stuff, protect themselves.
Play a business game.
And so my agent had called me pissed that I had disclosed that I was on anti-inflammatories. I was like, I just got off an ankle injury. Like, why wouldn't I disclose that? Because why not? Like, why would I come out of here still kind of have some lingering things? It's not hindering me, but still have some lingering things and risk it if it's not documented, because I'm learning about the disability, the line of duty. Like, you want to track everything and not just, push everything under the rug. And he's like, well, that's why they have the injury clause in here, because you're kind of disclosing that, you're still recovering, even though you're recovered. I'm like, they saw me move.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. I don't care. And he's like, well.
And once you get in the locker room anyways, the training staff's going to pump you with anti-inflammatories and Toradol
correct.
anyways.
Yeah. Right. Everyone in the locker room's got anti-inflammatories. And he's like, where's your head at? And I'm like, well, go back to him and see if they'll take it out. He's like, man, he's like, I'll do my best. But there's no other team involved. There's nothing there. So he calls, they don't remove the injury waiver. He's like, we're in a spot where you either want to sign it or not. And I was like, honestly, I don't think I'm going to sign it, because I would kick myself if I tore my knee or did some bad damage.
And you don't get paid out for
and I'm sitting on the couch and I'm regretting it. I'm like, why did I do that? And he's like, I respect it. Like, you got to do what you got to do, what's best for you. You're in a good place. Like, this might not be the end of the road, but you're in a good place to be.
Yeah, so just to kind of stop you there real quick. So say you don't have Bussin' with the boys on the outside. Say you don't have that, you haven't developed any identity outside of football. I'm saying, like, as far as like interest outside of football or another job or whatever the fuck. But do you think if you didn't have Bussin', you would
signed?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but yeah, because you're just at a spot to where these players, all these guys, they need to play ball. They want to play ball. Yeah. They have nothing else, so you're gonna play ball. Like, if I had gotten that opportunity, I don't have Bussin'. I don't have other stuff going on where I feel like I have some kind of leverage or continuity out of the game.
Yeah,
I'm probably signing, because what happened was they weren't removing it. He's like, do what you think's best, man. Like, you're in a good spot. Like, no one's gonna be mad at you. Like, you've done awesome things.
Yeah.
And so they come in, they're like, hey, Will, what do we think? I'm like, hey, I appreciate it. I'm going to pass on this. And if you get me a flight back to Nashville, I think that's the decision I'm going to make. It's like, I understand, man. Like, I get it. You got to do what's best for you. I wish we could have had you, but we'll get that flight information and, we'll send you on your way. He walk out and, I text Charles, I text my people. I'm like, hey, I said no. Like, I'm coming back to Nashville, but I said no. And, dude, I'm sitting there for about 15 minutes by myself. And then Mayock and the trainer come in. And they got my list of the injuries and stuff. So they're like, all right, well, so you're on anti-inflammatories. Like, what do you feel like? What do you got going on? And I kind of disclose everything. Blah, blah. So they're like, so you feel good? I'm like, yeah. I mean, I just did a workout.
Yeah, you saw me eat, yeah.
Yeah, and Mayock's like, so if we nix the injury waiver, will you sign? And I was like, yeah, I'll sign. Of course. And he goes, let's make it happen, and put out his hand.
Boom.
And he's like, man, we want you here. And so it happened. Yeah, boom, bro.
That's
I'm
tight.
like, yo, let's fucking go. Like, this is like, yeah, it wasn't like I got money out of it, but I did this essentially negotiated my way and had leverage to where it got removed. And so I'm hype. I'm like, I'm gonna be out for the next couple months. I'm stoked too. Like, I was pumped to be out there. Their facilities were nice and stuff. Their locker room wasn't, but I'm talking about their weight room and everything else. Like, they had a nice little get up. And so yeah, I'm just out there in Oakland for the next 8 weeks, and just doing my thing, being a backup, and playing on special teams. And then it started to turn for me toward the end of the year.
Then the door cracks open.
Yeah, there was a time they brought in Preston Brown. You're probably familiar with his name. He was a linebacker that was on the circuit, but he had signed with the Bengals and went somewhere else and signed for a pretty big deal, like $16 million. But he had gotten cut because he was like overweight and stuff, and Raiders pick him up. So I'm like, fuck, I wonder if they're bringing him in to like compete with me, to compete, to like funnel out to like get up, sharpen up the depth chart. And sure enough, we're competing, and the Titans come to town. Big game, obviously. I'm playing against the boys. We got beat. And Press and I are splitting reps with base reps. So there might have been
playing Mike.
There might have been 14 reps out there that we had to split, which sucked because you're not in a groove. You know how it is playing backer. Like, number one, you're already thinking that you're competing, so you're kind of in your own head. There's already stress there, and I'm not in the breathing world yet. So you're already thinking about the guy next to you. I know competition breeds the best, which I agree with, but in the moment, you're thinking, you're looking over your shoulder because you're like, what are your coaches thinking? What's going on here? And you also need to get in a groove with playing ball. Like if you know you're about to, the next guy's going to have the next set, you're hoping you get the good set of plays. So if you don't really make any plays or do anything out there, you're like, this motherfucker's probably going to get some good plays to make.
Maybe the plays don't even come your way.
Exactly.
You know? Like it's the
exactly. So you're
now
in
it's
your head.
opportunity.
And I played okay, but not that good. And neither did Preston. And the next week they cut Preston. And we're in the meeting. We're in the linebacker meeting. My linebacker coach, Will, we had to cut Preston. Do you think you played good enough for Preston to get cut? And I'm like, no. And I'm not laughing, but I'm like, no. And he's like, I don't think he did either. And there's like a weird little dynamic in there because we had to let a guy go, which sucks. You never want guys to get cut. And he's like, I wanted him to stay. And, took it to the chin. Knew I needed to play better. But at the same time, like, I knew I needed to focus in and get it right. Like, but now it got decided, right?
Yeah.
We go out to the Jets. We get destroyed by the Jets. That's when I started to take over. My backer, he didn't play that well in the D coordinator's eyes, and they had some stuff going on between them. And, they're like, hey, can you function with the green dot? I'm like, yeah, I can roll. He's like, are you ready to go? Like, you really think you're ready to go? And I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, first team All-State, I can make it rain out here.
Yeah, I can make it rain out here. Because the first game I had played on base, I had played well. I had a nice hit on the we played against the Lions. I had a nice play. Had like 6 tackles. I played well. And Coach Green was like, I love you, man. He's like, hey, just go out there. Don't think like we don't care if you mess up. Because I got there the week of.
Yeah, and you love that confidence. Like,
right.
like it takes a special coach to be able to
right.
I guess
and
relay
he was
that
the
comfort.
man, bro.
Yeah.
I get in there and he's got like a little highlight montage, has a little play where I do bad, and he's like chirping me, but you can tell he's a good leader. Like he's got a good rapport with the team. Like all the boys, like they're all welcoming you. And but so like, yo, can you take over? And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And then I had took over with the green dot, strung together 3 good games.
Yes, I was watching. Yeah,
and
for sure.
I was hyped, bro. I'm like, yo, this is fucking all. And I essentially just told myself I'm studying my ass off, doing all my things. But I was kind of stress free about it because I'm like, what do I have to lose out here? I thought I was going out there to play teams and I was going to finish my last year playing ball, and then I was going to go all in on Bussin with the boys. So let me try to spread some Bussin with the boys, some for the boys.
Yeah, it's
like branding out there.
It's a
like
platform again now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Raiders fans go nuts. They're crazy. They're awesome.
Yeah.
And I had played well, and it's like, yo. I had like a introspective like post after the season and stuff like that, but it's like, yo, like I fucking did it. Like in my mind, like with what I was thinking about and the things I was doing and the goals I wanted, like I was in such a good headspace. Like, fuck, I just bought myself another year. I might get something in free agency because I played well.
It's just reinforcing the system you already have set. That's obviously succeeded time and time again.
Yeah, just the fucking mercenary, the grinder, the blue on the collar, the wolf mentality, like all this
Scrappy,
stuff.
gym rat,
Scrappy.
dog.
It's like, for me, it was that year with the Raiders was like, I felt confident enough to say same thing, different year. Like always the dude who's never like gonna be the no matter what, the starter on paper. Everyone sits in the front office. Will's our starter. I had that one year, but Will's our starter. Just never had that. It was always like you needed a situation to happen where I get in there and every time you overachieve and people are like, oh shit, you can play football. It sucks that it's a story of my career and you never like actually benefited financially off of it, but it was like, it's like, yeah. Like I can play ball.
I get it done.
I get it done. And so that year was just phenomenal. That's where everything kind of was like, I was just like stress free in the off season after that. That's when COVID happened. But everyone's like, you're not worried about this and that. I'm like, no, bro. I mean, it happened last year. The Raiders offered me the year late, like the next year they signed Littleton to a big deal. Spent a lot of money on Littleton.
Who? Littleton, Whitehead.
Corey Littleton.
Yeah.
They had let Whitehead go. Whitehead signed for 1 year, $2.5 million, 1.5 signing bonus to Carolina.
Okay.
So they cut Tyre, the one that I ended up replacing. He goes to Carolina and gets this little bag. And I'm thinking I might get something like that. Yeah. Because I took over that job.
At least a Ziploc or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Something.
A gallon
Come
bag.
on, man. Yeah. And they signed Corey Littleton big. Gruden, he was anchoring me in our exit meetings. To where you're saying, you'll never be a Hall of Famer. And I'm like, fair. You'll never be a Pro Bowler. I'm like, okay, man. Like,
chill.
I'm still,
chill.
like, fuck. I'm still attaining to get something like that. But he's like, but we need more people like you, man. He's like doing all this stuff. Like, you just grind. Like, you just get it. Like, you can't recreate, but, he's saying all this stuff. It's cool to hear because John Gruden.
Yeah.
And so they go in free agency, get Corey Little, and throw a lot of money at him. They also get that Nick Kawasaki.
Oh, yeah. He was
Kwiatkowski or...
Yeah, he went there
the
to
Bears.
Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, thick middle linebacker. When they signed him, I was like, fuck, I guess, they don't care to have me back or sign me back because I thought I might be going back there. And June comes around, and they call, and they offer me, and they're like, what's Will want? And, we don't say anything. We're just like, we want a fair offer. And they're like, what's that look like? We just want to be treated fairly.
Yeah, we don't come to the table first, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same kind of thing. They offer a minimum, no signing bonus. Of course.
Again.
Fucking of course,
yeah.
dude. And Gunther, the D coordinator, like, they're calling me, trying to recruit me and stuff. And I'm telling Coach PG, I'm like, bro, look, because they're calling me in OTAs. They're like, you'll obviously hit the ground running. Here's what I'm thinking of operating on 2 fields. You'll run this field. We'll run the other one. They had already signed the 2 guys, but then he's talking to me like I'm in the plans. He's like, you still, he's like, yeah, we miss you, man. We can't wait to get back here, blah, blah. I'm like, I mean, you guys got to offer me first. He's like, trust me, dudes are arguing all the time about offering you early now or offering you later. So I knew I'd get something, but they offer a minimum. I'm like, all right, boys. PG calls and he's like, yo.
No injury waiver, though.
No injury waiver this time, thank God. But PG calls and he's like, yo, what's the deal? He's like, bro, what's going on? Like, we got you a contract. I'm like, PG, with all due respect, I can do the same thing I did the last year. I proved that I can come in and play at the drop of a hat. Like, this is a minimum deal. If there's nothing above that, I can do the same thing. A team's going to need a linebacker late in training camp again. And I've proven, like, you guys were grateful enough. I'm saying it a lot better because Neil's telling me how I need to be talking. I'm like, you guys were grateful enough to allow me to play at the end of the year. And I put some good stuff on tape. So I have a resume to show that I can play at the drop of a hat and come out and do the same thing. So I don't need to come out there and put wear and tear on my body. He's like, we're not going to run you to the ground and do all this and that. He's like, bro, John Gruden and Mayock are in here arguing over Will Compton. He's like, I'm not trying to disrespect you or nothing like that, but he's like, we're trying to talk about how we're going to set stuff up with COVID and everything else, and we're having arguments about whether or not you're going to sign it and if you're grateful about the offer. He's like, we got Prince Amukamara. He was drafted in the first round. He signed a minimum deal. Nelson Aguilar, he was drafted in the second round. He signed a minimum deal. And, again, like, not to disrespect you, but you weren't drafted and you won't sign this deal. Like, I thought you wanted to be a Raider. Like, hey, I do want to be a Raider. Like, I want to play for you guys. I want to play so well that you guys get promotions. I want to play so well that when I'm done playing, you guys want to hire me as a coach. That's how much I want to put into this. Saying all the right stuff.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, there's just no need for me to sign, coach. Like, I truly love you. I miss you guys. I want to be out there. I want to be wearing the black and silver. But I don't need to do this right now. And he's like, can you do me something? Can you do me a favor? I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, can you call John and tell him all this stuff you just told me? And he's like, because I get it, man. Like,
I don't want to kill the messenger.
Yeah, he's like, I want to get you paid, but like, I got to go in there. And then they're like, PG, what's the word on Will? And he's like, I know we have a relationship. And he's like, all that stuff makes sense. And I think you get more money if you say that same thing to John. So I called John. Will Compton, man, you're tougher to sign than Keyshawn Johnson, man. What are you doing? And I'm like, hey. I'm like, coach, what's up, man? I'm with my family. They're in town. And I'm like, I'm just with my family. I'm like, I bet Keyshawn got more than a minimum deal on a Subway gift card to come back to play for you in Tampa. He's laughing. He's like, man, so what's the deal? What's the problem? He's like, I give him the kind of same spiel. He's like, look, we need more Will Comptons in this world, man. He's saying this stuff. And he's like, your personality, like, your little YouTube show, man, things only going to last so long, bro. He says that, so I'm like, all right, you're aware. He's like, your YouTube show, things only going to last so long, man. He's like, but your personality, like, it's infectious. Like, we need Will Compton on this team. He's recruiting. He's a master recruiter. And he's like, you don't want to play preseason? I won't play you in the preseason. You can sit, you can do whatever you want. I just want people to know. He's like, look, you're going to be the backup here. I want Nick to learn from you. And he's like, I want these young guys to learn. I want this defense to learn. Like, when you're out there running the twos and running the show, I want them to see you operate. And I want them to see this and that, like the stuff I see. Like, we want you on this team, man. And he's like, it's like, I appreciate it. And I wasn't budging. And, he's like, take your time, man. Enjoy your family. Like, don't make this decision now. This offer will be on the tape for you as long as you need it. And I'm like, all right, cool. And appreciate you, blah, blah. We get off the phone. And, we're in that spot to where I can sign. I don't have to sign, blah, blah, blah. And they leave the offer on the table throughout training camp. And it got to where it was like, there was like 2 weeks left of training camp, right? And I'm telling Charles, I'm like, hey, it looks like I'm going to have to go out to Vegas and get on board with the boys before season starts. I'd like to get out there with, a week or
move around, get the checks in. Yeah.
And Vrabe texts me, you been eating too many ribeye? Are you in shape or you been eating too many ribeyes? And I'm like, yo, let's fucking go, dude. I call Taylor. I'm like, guess what? He's like, Titans are signing you. I'm like, working out tomorrow or in a couple days. He's like, no fucking way. He's like, let's go. And like, we're all hyped. The equipment's there. Yeah, the dream's there. Hazlitt, my defensive coordinator on the Washington when I was first out there, Hazlitt's the one who got me from practice squad to roster. He's my linebacker coach now out here in Tennessee. And so it's like a reunion seeing Haz. I'm out there seeing Haz. I'm staying focused, doing all this stuff, ready to go. I'm ready to eat this workout up. The equipment guys are out there. Everyone's wanting me to succeed, right? It's like fucking the boys back.
They want the locker room guy
because Bussin with the boys is doing the thing. Like we're doing all this stuff. But it was awesome. And then, I perform on the workout, get back. Titans want to offer me minimum waiver injury, no signing bonus, all the bullshit. No right out of the gate. And then, all right, well, next the waiver injury, is he ready to go? We can't give a signing bonus. We set a standard that we don't give signing bonuses in training camp. Okay, well, Neil's like, your other clients, they don't have other offers, other options. We have another option with the Raiders. We get off the phone, we call the Raiders. Raiders are like, all right, we'll offer half the vet minimum signing bonus. This is $132,700. I think it's like $60,000.
Yep.
Neil gets off the phone with the Raiders. All right, I'll tell Will. We'll get back to you. Gets off the phone with the Raiders, calls the Titans. Hey, we have a full signing bonus offer from the Raiders. It was half, but
playing the game.
Titans are like, we'll give him that same amount in roster bonuses throughout the length of the season. Neil's like, that's not good enough. Because you're still risking injury being on the team the entire season.
Yeah, for those of you listening, like if you don't play the game, you don't get that chunk of the roster bonus. That's you get the roster bonus if you're active on the active 53-man roster that week.
Yeah, and so he's like, how about we get it to him in week 1 and then week 8, and we're basically like not good enough, and then it's week 1 and week 4, and then it's like, look, man, either get on, get off.
Give it to the boy.
Yeah. And so like, all right, we'll give him the full roster run. Vrabel and Neil are texting because Neil reps Vrabel, and he's like, look, man, I'm not bringing Will in. I wouldn't do that to him just to be a camp body.
Yeah.
Like, I have a relationship with him type of thing. And so I get signed to the Titans, bro, and the boy's back. So we have this year, and it's all it's been a story, but it's been fucking awesome, man.
But it was juicy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I play with the Titans, and now I'm in the same spot, dude, and building Bussin with the boys, and
sitting there with the same confidence that if the phone rings, I can go in, I can execute, and I'd be valuable.
Exactly, because I've learned, like, with the training and the eating and everything else, like, it's played into my mental from, like, I just enjoy doing it. Like, I love the process of everything. I love having that process and going from that process to going Bussin with the boys on this entrepreneurial stuff that we're doing or I'm doing. And it's just all feeding each other well. Like I don't stress about playing or anything else.
No doubt. And all those habits in general, like the healthy living, the training, all the biohacks and all that kind of stuff, like it's anti-mediocrity anyways. Like all that stuff makes you healthier, more energy, gives you the ability to execute outside of the football world too.
Absolutely. And because if not, I'll just be sitting inside building Bussin in a comfort AC, like, doing the stuff. And it is, bro. It's like you got to do tough ass shit. Like if I'm going to keep any type of savvy to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like yourself, like following you and shit. It's like you want to put yourself in stressful situations. And I know even when I'm done playing, I need to keep stuff hard in some type of way. Because if not, I'll just get comfortable and you just start believing all the comfortable hype that you have and everything else with the pod or anything. And you just get soft like,
yeah.
I'm all about it though.
Yeah, keep those calluses. Yeah, keep the calluses on the mind and the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never stop moving. I'll never stop training.
Yeah.
And then obviously like one thing, like obviously I admire your curiosity, like the books you read, what you've done with the podcast, all that kind of stuff. Like that's the type of life that you've never gotten comfortable. Like the entire story is, again, you created these systems and habits that made you uncomfortable. But like you did it by goal setting and journaling and all these habits that I admire as well. And it's cool for me to like again sit and see what you've done and how you've done it because one of my story mimics you in little ways
Absolutely.
and nuances too.
Yeah, you got a gritty little story that everybody hopefully listening to on Bussin with the Boys.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, man, it's
the last turn I want to take there.
Yeah, because I gotta be 4:49.
Oh yeah, dude. We can stop the biohacking, that kind of stuff. That's how me and Will met. We initially met through Dr. Eric Serrano, just his genius side of blood work and all these little biohacks and ways to optimize performance. And so, but that's again, that comes from your curiosity, and then you've gone and trained different places, and that's something I love doing too, is sampling stuff and applying it and creating this animal, this level of armor on myself and through different exercises and recovery methods. And I know you do the same, but that's how you're wired now.
Dude, it is, man. And it's like that curiosity part, and like you hit on it very well. It's like the curiosity mixed with like the humility of knowing like you don't know it all. Like, and you know, one of my boys, he talks about pattern matching. He's like read case studies, get out there and find more ways to do things, because at the end of the day, the blueprints of success are out there. And there's no need to sit there and think about reinventing the wheel for your own ego and act like you haven't reinvented the wheel. But getting out there and being so curious to where you might be getting so far into one lane, and then a curiosity sparks another, and then you realize, okay, I need to be in this lane a little bit because I'm so attached to this lane I'm doing right now. And so I feel like it is like that humility aspect of like pulling yourself back, because like, hey, you're going too far down that road, to where you can add this to your bag. Yeah. And balance yourself a little more. So it's like curiosity is like the key to all of it. And just chasing those edges, baby.
There it is, boy. Well, appreciate you being on, man.
This is awesome.
Yeah, and we're just for the fans, everybody. As of right now, nobody's listening. Only
millions, bro.
Yeah, probably my mom.
You always say that, Taylor. When we'd be on live and we only had like 50-something people watching our live, we'd be like, "Oh, 52 million people are watching." We just have fun with it.
Yeah, you hype it up. But where can everybody find you? Obviously, Bussin' with the boys at Bussin' BTW
at Bussin' WTB. Bussin' with the boys. We're on YouTube. My channel's at _Will Compton. Yeah, you can find us everywhere, man. Yeah, follow us, watch the episode, subscribe, rate 5 stars like you do this one.
Yeah, just the blue collar bandit.
Yeah, bro.
The gritty dude. I appreciate it.
Be a fucking wolf, boys.
Boom. That's it. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Boom.